The root and the offspring is the connection between the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, the ancestors and the grandchildren. The fig tree and the papyrus. These things are all connected in the words of Christ. In the first lesson, which is really just the preface of this discussion of the true identity of Christ. And why it's important is because the Father aspect, which is kept hidden because of its African origins, must be revealed in order for the truth to be fulfilled. In the previous episode, we went through the genesis of who the Lord is, right? Genesis 9:26. We should really say 25 when he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servant he shall be to his brother." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Now, this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gumar, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomar were Ashkenaz. Fast forward to verse 5. From these the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated, in their nations and their lands, everyone according to his own language, according to their families and to their nations. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, which is the word used for Egypt, or Kemet, because Egypt doesn't come into play until Genesis 12. Then the word Egypt is used. Genesis 11, the word Babel is used. And in Genesis 10, the word Mizraim is used. It's very important to understand that. And it proves itself when it discusses that Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Before the Lord is mentioned twice. And it's also important to understand that it is in the lineage of Hamites, and Cush, and Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan, in which Nimrod's story is being told, right? In between Cush and Mizraim, all right? So in the lineage of Cush, who begot Nimrod, right? This is the builder, all right, of Babel, because it's going to say here in verse 10, in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Iraq, Elkade, and Kelna in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Roth Ir, Kala, and risen between Nineveh and Kala. That is the principal city. Then he goes into Mizraim begot Lydium, Anamim, right? Lehabim, and Naphatim. These I ams and these I ams, these are plurals. Like, all right, it's very, very understanding. Like northern Egypt, southern Egypt, or upper and lower Egypt, upper and lower Kemet, upper and lower Kush, right? It's a way of plural. Mizraim, all right? Now, I want you to understand this part here. It says in 15, Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, the Jebusite, the Amorite, and the Girgashite. Now, this is getting kind of complicated, but one more in 18, it says the Arvadite, the Zamorite, and the Hamathite. Afterwards, the families of the Canaanites were dispersed, and the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as you go toward Gerar as far as Gaza. Then as you go towards Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim as far as Lasha. These were the sons of Ham, according to their families, according to their language, in their lands, and in their nations. And children were born also to Shem. Now, Shem's, just like Seth in Genesis 4, right, is used instead of Cain, right, in Genesis 5, right? He replaced his Lord. He becomes Lord at the end of Genesis 4. If you really look at these details, I do this stuff in my lessons, and for this podcast, I just like really just spelling it all out, and then we can go into greater detail in video lessons later. But I'm doing this to understand, so that you can understand the Bible is about mixing of nationalities to form new nations. From the Genesis is the genealogy. This is bloodlines. And when these bloodlines, who were the sons of, these are three sons from one man, but these are men, right, who represent different races of men. Three different races who surround the coastlands of what we call today Israel. But we know that the original inhabitants, the builders, that's being spelled out here, the Canaanites, they built there and then they went off into Assyria. Just like Genesis 2:10 through 14 is spelling out the relationship between the Nile River Valley, connection between Cush and Assyria. The same thing in Revelations 22, where it spells out the water of life. It was being traveled. It was like Venice. My point here is to establish the three races, right? Now, you got to understand that the Assyrian and the Mesopotamian people are already related. This is the reason why in the curse it says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem." So Shem is where Abraham is going to come from. Well, actually Abram. Abram is Abram until he has his firstborn son with Hagar, which was the Egyptian, which was a Hamite, right? It's just the word, they didn't call her, she was from Mizraim or Kemet. But she had the Hamite bloodline. And when she mixed that bloodline with Abram, now you had Abram became Abraham. Because now his son, who was Ishmael, who was separated from him but connected through the circumcision. So in that tradition, in your reality, if you are a male born in this society, 9 times out of 10, you have been circumcised, or your son has been circumcised. And it's in that tradition. So that's how your reality has been manipulated or influenced by the text. You have that mark of we'll say the God of Shem. All right? The Lord in the Bible. Now, he is opposed to the Cushite nations. He's in opposition with these people because of their land and resources, the birthrights. You see, they were born inhabiting the places where the jewels, gems, the resources, as we say to this day. This fight is not ancient. This fight is modern. This is happening right now in South Africa, all throughout Africa, all over the world, actually. This is the reality of not the ancient world, but the reality of modern times, the conquest of the black lands. It's just the movie that talks about our reality. The continuous battle between darkness and light. It's just what it is. It is what it is, right? So come into the light. Because magic occupies the black nations. This is the reason why Jesus says, I am the bright and morning star. The bright and morning star, the Tower of Babel, the towers in Giza are aligned with. I just read that the border of the Canaanites were from Sidon as you go towards Gedir, as far as Gaza, then as you go towards Sodom. Now that's the path from out of Africa into the land of Ur or Sumar. Mesopotamia, we call it today, because it is the connection between that nation and the Assyrian nation. So Japheth, the Assyrian nation, and Shem, right, are connected through the Euphrates. Their societies were unified before the time period of this Bible, because there's a time period that there was the connection between Africans and the land of Sumar were richer, but the conquering nations eventually overtook the land of Sumar, the Euphrates. That land was conquered first, all right, and revised into a metropolis, all right. And then, of course, the conquest then